The healing that he did was spectacular, and it was on a biblical level like I've never seen. I've seen so many miracles in Brazil, my own included. I let that water hit me all over the top of my head, my chest. It opened me up. I mean, it broke me wide open. I felt every cell in my body just explode with energy. I felt every symptom completely gone. I believe he belongs in jail. When you talk about child of God, two things need to be said.
Gregg, welcome to the podcast, my man. So lovely to have you on.
Thank you, Guy. So nice to meet you.
And it's so.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. And it's so typical where we're having these great conversations before we hit record. So it's like, okay, let's get it on. You're a man of many talents and many stories to tell, mate. So I'm excited to see where this podcast goes today. But just for our listeners, I'll be introducing you mainly to a new audience. You're at an intimate dinner party. You sit next to a complete stranger and they ask you what you do for a living. How would you respond?
It depends on who I'm talking to. Some people I might just say, oh, I'm a health and wellness coach. Other people, if I know they're cool, then I might mention, oh, I do energy work, or I do channeling, or I do, I host weekly healing circles on Zoom, or fire circles in person. I do, do in-person and remote healings. I use tuning forks for in-person healings, and other crystals and things like that. And then, for the remote sessions, I've got, patients all over the world, from Japan to Spain to, literally all the continents. And the amazing thing about those sessions is you would think, oh, well, it's the sessions where you're in person are going to be more profound. And that's not necessarily what I'm finding. I'm finding the more dramatic things are happening from a distance, because my theory is your body's not there to distract you. So you immediately get right to the energetic and the spiritual work with, no hindrances.
I love it, mate. I love it. I stumbled across your work many months ago. Like I mentioned, somebody just emailed me and said, check out Gregg, and I started looking through and I'm like, oh my God, he's a musician. He's been on the road. And now on your website was like energy medicine, astral projection, remote viewing, Akashic records, theta healing, all kind of stuff. Experiences of going on the search with John of God, like all these things I want to get into today, because I was like, this is my kind of conversation. So where did it start for you? Before we get into those things, were you spiritually inclined already? I mean, being a musician, you must be very open and creative anyway, I would imagine.
Yeah. I was more or less like that. I think, I don't know, typical American guy who was in a band. I went to high school and I thought, oh, I want to be a rock star. And, somebody who was a hedonist, would drink and, indulge in recreational things, and because that's what the rock stars do to enhance their creativity, I suppose. But so that's what I was doing for years, until, God, around the turn of the century, around 2000, I also, I wasn't making a living doing that. I was doing other things. I'm also a writer. So I ran an entertainment magazine for years, which was kind of dovetailed nicely into the music, because record labels would contact my magazine and say, can you send us press kits of all the best bands around the Philadelphia area? And I would tell them, yes, here's 4 bands. And then my band is in there because I think we're one of the best bands. So, really cool things happened. We got to open for some really major bands, back in the day, back in the late 90s. And we got picked up for a short period of time by a record label, A&M Records. And then they put us in the studio and then did what's called a spec deal. They paid for us to record some songs, and then they decided they didn't like them and then dropped us. And, the typical thing that happens if for anybody who's been through that record deal scenario. And anyway, so that happened. And right around that time, I realized, I got to make a living if I want to have any kind of retirement safety, and met my future wife at the time. And I started doing internet work, which was a great time to get started, right around the 2000s. And so, I got hired to come to the New York area, New York City area, and started working for a web company. And right around within a couple of years, I cut right to the chase. I got Lyme disease. I moved to the state of Connecticut where Lyme disease was discovered, and I went through the entire confusion about diagnosis. I never got bit by a tick, for instance. Everybody thinks, oh, it's called a tick-borne illness, but I was bitten by a spider. And who knew at the time that spiders could carry Lyme disease? Anything that can suck blood and digest it can, pass and transfer Lyme disease. So I went through that odyssey, and I almost died from the treatment. I had,
How did you
a
almost
night where
die?
I,
Sorry.
well, okay. So one of the first things I started doing antibiotics, and they weren't really working. So I found out about intravenous antibiotics, and I thought, well, if this is an infection, why don't I just disinfect my body with IV antibiotics? So I signed up for something called a PICC line, which is and I didn't even know what I was doing at the time. I didn't realize why I had to go to the hospital to get this line. It was surgery. And they basically cut into my bicep and ran a plastic tube or wire all the way to my aorta. And then they made a mistake. They jabbed my heart. I didn't know it because I've been lying on the table and I'm like, why do I feel so terrible? I feel like I'm going to pass out. And then, it was like, I've seen enough hospital TV shows where things were beeping and they're yelling at each other, and the hospital code, like, he's BP is dropping, all that stuff, and my blood pressure was dropping, and so they did. I almost died, not just then, but when I went home that night. I had the apparatus put in, and I was sleeping on my side. I rolled over on it and went deeper into my heart, and I thought I was going to die because of I don't know, I can't even describe it. My heart was just going crazy. And then again, a third time, I got one night, about 3 weeks later, I kept it in too, by the way. So when all this happened, I went downstairs to the couch of our house, and I didn't want to wake my wife. I just thought, I think I might die, so I'm going to lay down on the couch and see what happens. I waited several hours, and the sun came up, and I had a big presentation to give at work. I didn't even call work. I thought I was going to die. So sun came up. I stand up. I'm like, okay, I'm all right. I called, the emergency doctor. I told him what happened. He said, I mean, this is like the state of healthcare in the United States. He said, you got through the worst of it. Yes, what you went through was terrible, but this thing's been installed. Now you can put the antibiotics in. Why don't you tough it out? So like an idiot, I'm like, okay. And I toughed it out, and started administering my own antibiotics, which was the point. You were given a ball of, that has a nozzle on it that you screw into the port, and I would administer my own antibiotics every day. And it just turned me into a zombie. I was falling asleep right after dinner. I would just muster up enough energy to get up and go to work every day. But I would have these really bad brain lapses in meetings, and it was awful. So, but one night, yes.
How long had you had that Lyme disease for before that treatment?
About 2 years.
Because Lyme disease apparently it's awful, right? Like it just destroys the body. So you'd have had 2 years of hell before that, I'm guessing.
Yes. And it's so weird because sometimes the symptoms can go almost completely away and you feel okay for short stints. And my doctors were saying to me in the beginning, your symptoms aren't life-threatening, so maybe you learn to live with them. Like, what? That's terrible advice. Aren't you curious about, what I didn't go to the trouble of coming here and consulting with you and paying you money for some whim. I'm having these real symptoms, and some doctors would say yes. Anyway, all of that part, every Lyme patient I've ever talked to, they've gone through it too. There's two phases of Lyme disease. The acute Lyme disease, you can take care of it with antibiotics if you catch it in the first 60 days of infection. But if you don't catch it, then it turns into something else. And honestly, part of the disease turns into like a spiritual battle, which I wasn't ready for that. I just wanted to do the physical stuff and get it over with. But it turned into this unbelievable, well, ultimately a spiritual awakening. But yeah, so one night, my wife and I got in a really bad argument, and I went to a different bedroom, and I was like, I'm not, good night. I'm sleeping by myself tonight. And I laid down, and my heart started just going. I was having a heart attack. And I thought, you know what? Okay, good. I am ready to go. Please take me, angels, please. I've had a good life up to this point, and I can't imagine living life like this, one more day. It's just agony. It's mental, physical, abject fatigue. It feels like you have a hangover and the flu on top of, name another illness, rheumatism and joint pain, all these things. And I just couldn't imagine it. So I didn't die. And within days, my diagnosis of the situation now is, after looking back, a lot of my beliefs about the illness, and I had a lot of fight or flight, blame mentality. There's like a cage around me of beliefs. And on that night, I let them all go because I was ready. I was ready for something completely different, even if it meant death.
Huh.
So I let all that go, and within days, miraculous things started happening for me. And yeah, so to answer your question, I was not, spiritual stuff wasn't really on my radar. I was open to it. One of the things when I ran my magazine, a friend of mine told me about Reiki, energy healing, and we wrote an article about it. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. And then I actually went to a Reiki training class way back in 1997. So, I was open to that, but I certainly wasn't a spiritual seeker or anything like that until I almost died. And then I started having these supernatural experiences. I started meeting other people who were kind of closeted spiritual people who were having supernatural experiences as well. And then, ultimately, I found, so I started. Yes.
So, no, that's okay. I just jump in just because you create an open loops in me. So I just want to close the loop. So would you say it'd be fair enough that you fully surrendered in that moment?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've experienced that in my life too. I can relate to that. And then that's when everything started to shift for you.
Yes, exactly.
And when you said you started having supernatural experiences, like, can you give us an example? What was that starting to feel like for you?
Well, one of the first things that happened was, this is like one day after I almost died. I'm driving in my car and I'm hearing a guy on the radio. And there's these DJs here in the United States that they used to call them shock jocks. These guys who were tell jokes and try to shock you with their humor and all that stuff. So they had this psychic going, which I'm like, this is not a good combination. These jokesters with this serious psychic. But they really admired the psychic. So the psychic would come on and people would call in to try to heckle him. And this guy would just knock down every single heckler because, as somebody would start to insult him, the healer would say, how long ago did your mother pass? She's here right now, wants to speak to you. I mean, you talk about shutting somebody down. That kind of stuff is happening. But the thing that really caught my attention was he was pushing energy to these people while they were on the phone and they were exclaiming that they could feel it. I thought, I just had this weird thing, like I need to contact this guy. So I did. We set up a phone session. So I'm telling you, I almost died 24 hours before and wanted to die. Now I'm contacting this guy. We set up a phone session within 4 days. And during the session, he starts scanning me as we're talking. And he says, he starts saying, all right, I'm doing all these things. I'm releasing, you have all these negative entities attached to you, like hundreds of them. You've got blocks. There's a curse that's been put on you. I'm the only one who could have done it. He said, I'm not saying that out of ego, but this day has been foretold that I was going to help you, unlock all this stuff. And then I hear him say, he's more special than you know. So he's talking to me, but he's talking to some other beings. I said, what did you just say? He said, they're telling me that you're more special than I know, that you're going to be doing this kind of healing, that you're going to write books, and that you're going to fight the good fight. And he said, I want to stay in touch with you. I said, well, while he was saying all these things, the depression that I had for the past 2 years went away. My vision changed. Everything got brighter in the room. Most of my symptoms went away. So I wasn't really paying attention to what he was saying about me being special or, having healing potential. I was just freaking out about how good I was feeling. So the session ended. And, again, this is just a week or so after this major low point in my life, right? And I just didn't know what to make of this. So, and then within a few days of that, I met another woman who became more or less my mentor in energy healing. And the bizarre thing about that was she said that my energy body, my spirit, had been waking her up in her bed before I met her, asking for healing. So this is some wild stuff going on within days of this, near-death experience. And, I say that near death, it's just because I almost died. I didn't have the classic, went through the tunnel, left my body, saw my body on the ground. I didn't go through that, but I've been on a lot of interviews where they call it near death. And so, okay, I just want to be clear about that. So anyway, yeah. So this woman helped me, with, basically training me on how to do remote energy healing. She was the one who just basically said to me one day, she said, listen, I don't think you understand how, I've seen your energy body on the other side. You can do way more than I can do, which I just laughed out loud. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, no. She said, tomorrow night, my uncle has cancer. So she said, I want you to visualize my Uncle Nicky. I said, well, can you send a picture? Nope, not going to send a picture. Meet me where my Uncle Nicky is, and we're going to do energy work on at 8:00 at night. So at night at 8:00, I just meditated, and I couldn't believe it. I saw a man's face, and I saw this woman standing next to him. I started seeing the things with like no training. She just suggested that I could do it, and I started doing it. And that's more or less how I got started doing this type of work. She would just open the possibility. She knew there was something in me. She's like, Gregg, you just need to be reminded of what you already know. She's like, I'm not teaching you. You've already done this, in other lives. I'm just helping to remind you. So that was amazing. So I started doing healings on people and having like remarkable experiences. Being able, I did the thing that guy did on the phone with me, but I would do it, either over the phone with other people or in the same room as them. I would just say to my friends, hey, see if you can feel this energy. And I would push energy to them in the same room or on the phone. They would feel it. And I thought, okay, I don't know what's going on, but this gave me a new reason to live, and all the while I was, I felt so much better after that session over the phone, but, the symptoms were still there. There's many aspects of my life that were keeping the disease around. I was in a high stress environment. my wife and we were having a hard time because I was sick. It's hard to stay in a relationship with someone when the other person is so ill. Let's face it. And I was not in a good mood most of the time, so I was miserable to be around. But and I wasn't eating well and all these other things. So that I still had the physical stuff that needed to be healed. So I contacted a friend who recommended a psychic to me, and I talked to her about certain things, and she more or less said, "Stop seeing doctors." I named every single doctor that I've been seeing. She's like, "Yep, that person's hurting you. That person's hurting you. That person's hurting you." I couldn't even believe it. And the last question was, I'd seen this video about this healer in Brazil named John of God, and I just said, "What about this guy?" And that was a moment my life changed because she said, "Yeah,
What year was this when you went down to see him?
2011 is when I went to see him." Yeah. So I just want to say one thing. If anybody's watching this and you're looking up John of God now on Google, he's in jail for molesting women. That is true. I saw no signs of it, and I'm not saying that I believe he belongs in jail. This is the confusing thing. When you talk about John of God, you need two things need to be said. The healing that he did was spectacular, and it was on a biblical level like I've never seen. I've seen so many miracles in Brazil, my own included, that there's no way that whatever they were real, but also real. He molested women, and this is almost, you hear about these things, these spiritual healers who abuse women. From Yogi Bhajan to the guy who created the hot yoga guy. I can't remember his name. It's all over the place. It happens, but no excuses for it. It's the reality. But just talking about the healing, about John of God, the amazing thing. Oh, I was still pretty sick, and this woman said, "You can. I know people who take people to Brazil, so I'll hook you up with a tour group," which was that was really cool. And so I talked to the tour group people, and they said, "Well, you got to go there for 2 weeks." And I said, "I can't leave my family for 2 weeks or my job, and I don't even know if I can fly 10 hours down there. I don't know if I can make it. I'm so sick." And the woman just said something really profound to me. She said, "Gregg, if you're meant to be here, all doors will open for you to come here. And the first miracle will be you coming here." She said, "Just let that be a possibility." And she's absolutely right. I had to go get a visa, and I was so brain fogged out and so tired. I got it. And within 2 weeks of talking to the psychic, I was in Brazil. It was just amazing. So, the place down there it's still there. The town is called Abajania, Brazil. It's on ley lines. It is on, there's quartz crystals all over the place. Parts of it are on a crystal cave. With my energy training at that point, the first day I set foot in the area where he was healing, called the Casa, every hair on my body went up. It was like, okay, this is supernatural. It would be a common occurrence to walk down the street of this tiny town and just watch somebody fall to their knees because boom, the energy of the angels or somebody hits them and they heal. So yeah, that's basically what I did. I went. The healing that I experienced was what was called spiritual, psychic surgery or spiritual surgery, where a group of us would sit in a meditation room, maybe 50 people. He would come in and just say a few words. All he did, it was the entities that he was invoking that would come, and you could feel sensations all over your body. And then you'd feel amazing afterwards. And that would only take like 15 minutes. And then they would say, treat yourself as if you've undergone physical surgery, and take this cab ride to the hotel. I mean, my hotel was a block and a half away. They said, "Nope, you need to take a cab there." Okay. I got there and they said, "First thing you do, go to sleep." Well, it was 10:30 in the morning. So I got caught talking to people because I said, don't talk to anyone after your surgery. Go right to bed. I told them, I said, listen, I feel really good. I want to talk to people. They said, don't do it. Go lay down and just close your eyes and pretend to sleep. And as soon as I did that, I didn't wake up for 18 hours. And when I did wake up, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. Like there's so much healing that I went. And they keep you away from people for 24 hours. They bring you your food. They say, just don't leave your room because there's so much intense energy that you have to integrate. And so after being down there for 2 weeks, I had a miracle happen to me at what they call the spiritual waterfall. So it's a special area that that they don't take everyone to. It was on the weekend, so it was kind of our day off there, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to hang out and enjoy the beautiful countryside, or just stay in my room. And whenever I brought a little acoustic guitar, they said, no, you should come. This is the spiritual waterfall. It's, they have monkeys and toucans down there. It's a sacred place. It's like a church almost outdoors. Like you don't speak, you don't touch a leaf on any of the plants. The water runs through a underground crystal cave. The water is sacred. It's high energy. I was like, all right, okay, I'll come. It sounds, I wasn't believing it, but I went, and they drove us down this weird, crazy road, and we walked down these really precarious concrete steps down there, and you weren't allowed to speak. I also separated the men from the women, so the women went first. And by the way, the waterfall was like about this wide, like 2 feet wide. It was kind of like, wah, wah. I thought it was going to be this massive waterfall, but no, just this, more or less a small stream. But, there I could feel the energy. But when I got there, it was like, wow, this is a sacred place. And finally, when the men came, we went down to the area, and it's an 80-degree day in Brazil, and we could see our breath. It was really, so that was the first weird thing that happened. The second thing is every single person reacted the same way to being hit by the water. They acted as if, I thought, wow, that water must be really cold. People either shrieked or, they went through something, right? So I just thought, all right, I guess it's really cold. So I went, in fact, they had a railing for you to hang on to while the water hits you. It's out in the stream. So I got the railing. The water hit me, and I couldn't breathe. And it was not that it was near my face. My entire body went into a contraction, and my body just tried to lock in and not let go of, I guess, emotions and things. And so people started praying next to me. The men were like, let it all out, Gregg. And sometimes it's hard for me to talk about this. It chokes me up. But I used to not be able to get through this part without weeping, because it was hard for me. I was letting go of decades of stuff that was buried in my psyche, I believe. And so the people were being very kind and saying, let it all out, Gregg, let it all out. And as soon as I did, I let that water hit me all over the top of my head, my chest. It opened me up. I mean, it broke me wide open. And when it was over, I felt every cell in my body just explode with energy. I felt every symptom completely gone. So we go back to our hotel, and I'm feeling amazing. And, they said, don't take a shower, let the water really soak in. But I went to the bathroom and washed my hands. I looked up in the mirror, and I just burst into laughter, because I've never had the experience where, I just seen myself in the mirror like an hour and a half before. It didn't look like me. I mean, not like another person. It looked like me 20 years before, or 10 years maybe. And I was like, wipe my eyes, look at myself like, oh my God. And I just thought, this place is so supernatural. It's playing tricks on my mind and on my eyes. But I jumped on my iPhone to talk to my wife through FaceTime. And I didn't say anything to her. She just said, how's it going? And then she stopped herself. She said, oh my God, you look different. What happened to you? And I couldn't even talk. I said, I'm healed. This place is supernatural. I don't know. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me.
That's incredible. How many times did you receive healing in those 2 weeks, or was it just those two moments and the rest was about just being present and into? I'm standing here right now in Lake Taupo in a beautiful retreat space. And there's a vast difference between an intellectual experience and passive listening to a fully embodied lived experience. Because that's what retreats can do. They can help you land, start to truly reconnect to yourself, to others, to nature, and to spirit as well. There's so much in it. That's why we created Live in Flow, and that's why we are so passionate about getting this work out there and bringing people together. If you want to find out more when our next retreat or event is coming up, just check out the link below. And now, back to the podcast.
Great. Yeah, there was two psychic surgeries and then that waterfall moment over the 2-week period. So they only really allow you to do, back in the days, one healing per week, more or less. Because there's so much to go through. The healings, the recovery from the healings were not easy. One of my friends said it reminded him of a bad acid trip. It was because it wasn't just the physical stuff you're going through. It was the ego work down there was insane. Like I just had my ego demolished. So I ended up going down there 6 total times because I didn't understand, the day that we were ready to leave, they said to us, okay, look, we have this, what they call a reentry discussion. They're like, you're hovering around the Earth right now. And you know how the satellites or whatever, the space capsules come into Earth really fast and they can burn up on reentry. They said, you're going to the land of heavy energy. Wherever you lived is much heavier energy than here. They said, the first rule here is don't get into arguments about what you've been through here. Nobody's going to be able to understand what you went through. And so don't do it. And then they also said, look at all the toxic things that are in your life when you get back. You're going to look at things through different eyes. The people, the places, the things, the jobs, the food, and other substances perhaps. And look at what things you will need to distance yourself from. So I didn't listen to any of that. I went home like, I don't need to hear that. I'm good. I'm healed. What do I need to do? And I didn't, so I went right back to everything. Within 6 months, I started having symptoms return and I freaked out, booked a flight back down there and I went back down and, it's not cheap. And, the 10-hour flight alone each way is, but, that's how much I wanted to not have Lyme disease anymore. So, I went down. By the third time I went down, people started to recognize me. They're like, oh, this guy's going to be around here all the time, in this little town. And a woman said something to the effect of like, I guess you're going to come down here every year to get recharged. And then I had a reaction to that. She didn't mean it in a mean way, but I took it as, have I learned nothing, being down here? Because, half of what you learn down there in a situation like that, is about physical healing. The other half's about spirituality. And there was so much deep spiritual work going on down there. It was just, it was like a spiritual hospital, or spiritual training, whatever, all those things in one. So I still went down 3 more times, but the other 3 times was for spiritual evolution, as they call it down there, where I wasn't worried about my physical healing anymore. I was taking care of it at home. And then I went 6 more times. John of God used to come to the Omega Center in Rhinebeck, New York, which is not far from where I live. So I would bring my own groups of people through, people who recovered from brain tumors. I've watched several people have spontaneous exorcisms in front of me, like just profound, amazing things. And then, and then in 2018, he got prosecuted for molesting women. So the whole thing shut down. But anyway, it was an amazing few years of experiences that I'll never forget. I wrote about most of them in my first book, The Gratitude Curve. But deeply impacted me and my perception.
That's wild.
Kind of interrupted the energy healing for a while because I thought, this guy is the best. He's what am I gonna do? Healing wise, but then I did whatever. That's not the right way to look at it. Everybody has healing potential, So I calmed down about that. But we see that kind of thing. Yeah.
No, first of all, it's an amazing story. Like it's like I was saying, I think it was off air, but you're the second person on the podcast now that went down to see John of God, and it's been a big part of that journey, that whole area. But if you had to reflect back on those, 6 visits and integration and coming out the other side, what would be the biggest lesson for you take home for people listening to this now from all of that experience?
I think the biggest lesson is that miracles are real. I've seen them so many times. And this is what I used to tell people. I can give you the recipe for having a miracle because I watched it. And the recipe is you believe that they can happen and then you don't expect them. So believe that you can experience a miracle and then stop thinking about it. Don't think that you're going to have one. Just hope that you can, or just put the potential out that you will, because I've watched the expectation of having a miracle ruin it for people. Because I was sending people down there and I was bringing people through. And one woman said in particular, Gregg, I did everything that you did, but I didn't have your experience because I'm not you. I said, yeah, and I think I, polluted the water by telling you you were going to have an experience like me. So that was a huge lesson for me to learn. But there were so many other people who I just said, come on, let's go. Look what happened to me. It's not gonna happen that way for you. It'll be different, but you can have a miracle. You deserve a miracle as well. And they would, so that's one of the biggest things I learned is that, number one, that these miracles are real and can happen. It was amazing to witness them. I can't even tell you how things so.
I just wanted to ask, it's fascinating, isn't it? And like, from what I'm listening to you, what I'm hearing is that, you'd been pushed into such a pain point where that almost had to crush your ego to fully surrender into anything, then you're opening up to that what you speak of, that possibility. And then you're putting yourself in an environment that is then nurturing what your energy field and all that is your body is been holding on to, and able to clear your field essentially, and connect to your divine self more and more from that.
Yeah, that describes it very well. So from that point onwards, I realized I don't have to come to Brazil to tap into the energy, because the energy is universal energy. But the reason I needed to go to Brazil was to understand the possibility of it and to experience it, and to use that as a guiding, a North Star of other experiences. So, when all that stuff kind of wound down, I started a practice in, where I live, energy practice. The year before that, John of God got prosecuted. And I've been honored to participate in other people's miracles, just again, not by design, but just by the potential, telling the patient, okay, let's give it a go. Let's see how you'll do. And, I had, one in particular within, a year of me starting my practice, a woman who had Lyme disease. I was doing energy work with her, and nothing was working for her. It was, again, that kind of mentality where she tried all these physical things and she was getting depressed. She said she was losing her identity. And I said, good. And she said, what? I said, maybe you're meant to be somebody else. And that personality that you've developed now needs to change. I say to people all the time, Lyme disease is a life-changing illness, and maybe your life needs to change. So, she was open to that. She didn't really want to hear it, but I just said, all right, let's continue doing these energy sessions. So I did 2 physical sessions on her, and part of what was going on with her was she had rotator cuff tear. So she couldn't lift her arm very high. So I applied tuning forks in that area and other energy work. And, she started getting better range of motion. And she had a physical therapist who said, oh, you must be doing something, because your range of motion is better. So that was after 2 times. We thought, all right, that's cool. And then she couldn't come in to see me in person. So we scheduled a remote session. This is when I learned that remote sessions can be they can be definitely as effective as physical sessions, possibly more. And because the physical body's not there to distract. So anyway, we set up a session and we do it over the phone. And one of the first things I do is recite a protection ritual. And then I lock in and on her energy body, what I'm seeing. And I'm seeing her in a past life. I'm seeing her with like a powdered wig, like she's in France, 400 years ago. And then I get this strange feeling like she's some kind of prostitute. So I'm seeing all this and I'm like, okay, this woman, she's Catholic. Number one, she probably doesn't believe in past lives. And number two, she's not going to want to hear that she was a prostitute in a past life. So I thought, I wasn't going to say anything, but then I kept getting this irritating feeling, I think, from her guide saying like, no, you need to say it to her. So I did. And she was actually totally fine with it. And then I saw a part of the culture back then that I had to read about because I didn't. So she was a part of the French aristocracy. Her husband, she had a couple of kids through a husband that had a lot of money. And he died of some illness or something, but through some shady business dealings, his friends took all of his money and she had no money. And she was left out in the street. She couldn't even live in the same house that she lived in with the kids. So she did the only thing, she was in the aristocracy. She didn't know how to sew or cook or any of this. So she did the only thing she knew how to do. And she became a consort, basically would go to some of her husband's old friends and, sleep with them for favors and money and so forth. And I saw that she had gotten into an argument with one of these men who was much older than her. Excuse me. And he pushed her down the flight of stairs and then it broke her shoulder. She ended up dying from that. No, not immediately from just the injury, but she wasn't taken care of. And then as I'm telling her this, she started getting, she sounded distressed on the phone. She said, Gregg, my shoulder's heating up as you're talking about this. I said, okay, that's a good thing. If something's going on, you're healing. So we finished the session up. Everything was fine. And then she came back a week later to the healing center where I was doing the residency healing. And I'm sitting with the owner of the place and we're having tea and my patient comes in and we, the owner and I look at her like, look how good she looks. Like she looks like younger. She's just beaming. She looks, the picture of health. So the patient comes over, starts talking to us, and we both say, like, you look great. You must be feeling better. Yes, I'm feeling better, Gregg. I got the funniest story to tell you. She said, I didn't tell you that I was scheduled for surgery for my rotator cuff. And, 2 days after our session, I went to go to my doctor to get a CAT scan to get measured for surgery. And he did the CAT scan and he came back in the room and he was just looking at it and he said, I got some bad news. And she said, what? We can't do surgery. And she said, why? Because there's nothing to operate on. This rotator cuff tear is gone. Like, what happened? And, she said, well, I had some energy healing. He was like, what? So, we thought that was amazing that the session had positive results that were corroborated unwittingly by a doctor. So the owner of the wellness place is like, oh my God, we got to let me go get my video camera. We're going to make a testimonial, She walks away and then the woman leans into me and says, and by the way, Gregg, I don't have Lyme disease anymore. And that that was hard for me to believe because it's so hard to get rid of the Lyme disease. But that was one of the biggest miracles that I've been honored to participate in. And, I feel like all I did was just view the past life. I didn't do anything, other than, and because I'm understanding more and more now that there's more of these types of stories in my second book, that Your Love Will Make the Difference, because I'm finding out that that's all you need to do. When you have a past life trauma, you just need to bring it up with the patient. Yeah.
No, amazing. So I got two questions for you rolled into one. One is,
Okay.
how is your Lyme disease, your journey, which we haven't closed? And secondly, is then with all your experiences in witnessing, with like the lady with the rotator cuff shoulder or whatever, because it was so easy to think that that's a physical trauma, but then we're working on the field component, which is affecting the physical. So how much of it do you think then is in the field itself? So even if you had Lyme disease, even if you cure it, like get rid of the physicality of the Lyme disease, if that's such a thing, but it's still resonating in a field, and why it keeps coming back. Or then we got past lives or emotions and so forth. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I do know what you're saying. That's a very good question. Let me address the Lyme disease thing first. I'm in remission from Lyme disease. I've been in remission since about 2012 or so. I've heard people speak about Lyme disease being an energetic illness where it can leave the physicality of a body and linger in the morphic field, and then it can come back. So I didn't like hearing that, but I can understand that concept. So that's an interesting. You're the only person who's asked a question that prompted that idea for me to bring that up. So yeah, I've seen it with other people where, and for my situation, I still feel like I needed the physical, to get rid of the physical bacteria and the infections while doing the energetic work as well. But to your other point about the field, so this is what I've, come to understand about injuries, especially past life injuries. That when there's a traumatic death, hanging or a stabbing or anything like that, that location of the body will, in all subsequent lives, will continue to have a problem in that area. So when you create a weakness in that person's energetic field to such an extent that the illness tends to be attracted to that area. I do see that. And all we have to do to relieve it is to bring up the trauma through, past life. I've got friends who do hypnosis and they do past life regressions that way. But these are spontaneous past life regressions that happen during the sessions I do where, it comes to me, as I'm engaging with the person's energy body, either remotely or physically. I start to see it looks like a dream to me, where I'll see their face and then I'll see it morph into, whatever life they're leading. And sometimes, the person might be female in this life, but they're a man in this particular life where they need the healing. So that's what I've noticed. And, just bringing up the past life trauma can release the energy from it. And to the extent of, it can have some dramatic physical and positive impacts on the body.
Yeah.
But I've also run into this where it's not the person's path to completely heal. I've run into that. That's hard to understand, right? So there's one particular patient that I've been helping for years, and his wife brought him in, and I was helping him with physical, herbal treatments, weekly energy sessions, and the needle just wasn't moving on his Lyme disease. So I asked his guides, "What's going on? Why is he this so sluggish?" And they showed me his past lives. They said he's not going to get better in this life. He's got karma. He's burning off and unwinding. They showed me he was a Celtic chieftain and he was responsible for like hundreds of deaths. So I don't even know if the, he may carry on karma into another lifetime. It was pretty dramatic. But so that was a problem. But and it was interesting because his guide said, I said, is there nothing we can do? And the guide said, well, you can take on some of his karma if you want, and that'll help him heal. And I thought, no, I don't think that sounds like a very good idea for me. Yeah. But the strange thing is, it didn't mean that he couldn't heal from acute problems. He came in that winter, and his wife brought him in, sprained his ankle. He'd fallen on the ice, and his wrist, I sprained his ankle, sprained his wrist, and all up and down his arm was purple and green. You know how the hematomas start like almost instantly when you sprain one of your extremities. And she brought him in, and she said, should we go to the ER? I said, well, let's do an energy session first. So I did. And, I would touch his sleeve. I couldn't even touch his sleeve. He was in so much pain. So I just did the session on him. That was a Friday, and they were due to come back on the Monday. So again, she said, should I go to the ER? I said, no, why don't you just go to the drugstore and get a sling so, he's not bumping her around. They come in on Monday. He doesn't have the sling on. He throws it down. She said he hates that thing, and he didn't sleep the first night very well, but he slept last night really well. So we get on the table. I look at his arm. There's no discoloration at all. I'm able to touch his sleeve. In fact, when I start the sessions on the person's back, and then I roll them over, he puts his full weight on his wrists and turns over. And I realized his wrist is completely healed. Like in 48 hours, a sprain. It's a minor miracle, but still, that's not normal. So, I brought it up to his wife, and she said, yeah, this seems like we just had a little miraculous experience here. So, he was capable of that kind of healing. I guess the karma didn't affect that, but the karma, the big ticket items like Lyme disease, it just wasn't in the cards for it. Or, well, whatever. Karma was in place to keep that from happening. Yeah.
No, beautiful.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it totally is. As we come to the end of the podcast, there's something I do want to ask you before we wrap things up, was that right at the beginning of the podcast, you mentioned that you were finally open to possibility through that surrender. And then it's like, what's possible? And you started to realize that you already had these gifts within you. It was about nurturing them into existence. And I think about everyone that is walking around that is closed off to their own potential and possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think that has become my role, or one of my jobs, or role, whatever you want to call it. With the writing of my second book, it felt like there's chapters in the book so this was something I didn't think I would be able to do. I've begun channeling. And it's not, I don't develop a weird voice or take on a different personality or anything like that. It's more or less by osmosis. I think it's described as a trance medium, TRANCE. So whenever I'm leading our online group healing circles every Sunday, for instance, I'm in a meditative state. I invoke the guides and the guardian angels and healing entities and non-physical beings who have all of our best interests in mind to provide protection, healing, and guidance, to keep away interlopers and so forth. And once that space is clear, angelic beings can come. I never connect with them. I just ask for information, and I feel it. Sometimes it's emotional. Sometimes I burst into tears when they let me experience unconditional love. It's profound. Other people in the group can feel it too, or can see it. And they started giving information. There's always, seems like in the past 5 years or more, there's been a lot of political upheaval, a lot of divisive things going on in the world, especially if you spend a lot of time on social media. So I asked the guides, about 3 or 4 years ago, what's our role in a chaotic world? And they had a lot of great things to say. mainly that they said, stop, stop paying attention to the things you don't like, that are upsetting you, because you're losing your energy. So tend to your own garden, tend to your own energy, and realize your potential as being like a lighthouse of love. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Let that out. And we're here, so that's the title of the book, came from your love will make the difference. They said that. At first I thought it meant just me, but they meant no, every single person in the world is like a puzzle piece, plugging into the collective. So Guy, your version of love, my version of love, once we get that all plugged in and activated, we have the revolution of love. We have heaven on earth. And that's what we're here to, I believe, understand that we have the potential to be, the light bulb plugging into, the universal mind, and we should, it's my role, I believe, to help activate people and help them understand that.
Thank you for sharing. I love it. It's pretty wild when you start to experience those experiences, isn't it? Because, we spoke off air about the retreats we run here. And when you set up that sacred space and you open up the heart potential as well, what beings and angelic beings can come in and start to support us and meet us because our frequency is higher. It's phenomenal. People think you're just going nuts, losing your mind in everyday normal life, But look, just to wrap up the podcast, mate, can you show us your book? I know you got it there. I didn't even realize that you had a new book out when I invited you on. But there you go. Your love will make the difference. Amazing. What can they expect if they grab a copy of your book, mate? What can they expect from it?
Well, the second book, the one I just held up, is the spiritual adventure. Well, the subtitle is a memoir of spiritual adventures through healing. So it's a lot of the things that I just talked about. It's about me going to different places in the world, doing energy clearing through this assignment that I was given, by the guides. I found I went to Andros Island in the Bahamas. The tip of it is in the Bermuda Triangle. And I went to the spectacular place called Morgan's Bluff, where it's like Tierra del Fuego there. It's always windy. The waves are crashing 50 feet high. It's just spectacular to behold it. But there is something going on there. Potentially a piece of Atlantis is there. I don't know what, but it needed to be cleared. And, and as I was there with my daughter clearing the energy, we looked down. So it's on this promontory of volcanic rock. Some of it's kind of spiky. And I looked down and there's footprints in the rocks, footprints in the molten rock that I could put my foot in. And I can't explain that. Like, how on earth were human footprints made in molten lava? And I don't know when that island formed, but it wasn't just a few weeks ago, So there was a lot of spectacular things that I mentioned in the book, and it's kind of like the Da Vinci Code, because I was given these visions through some, energy sessions I was doing of places to go in the world. Paris at Kilometre Zero, right in front of Notre Dame Cathedral. Andros Island in the Bahamas, Montauk Island in Long Island, and to do each one of them has some particular thing of where there's some sort of devastation that's happened. In front of Notre Dame Cathedral, it used to be a temple of Isis before, the patriarchy came in and turned it into a Catholic church, and then they were burning witches out in front of it. And one of the last people they burnt was Jacques de Molay, the Grand Master of the Templars. So a lot of wild stuff happening, and burning people, executing people in front of a church. That's not good. That's not good energy, So all that needed to be cleared. So the amazing thing was, the guy was like, you got to do this before the end of the year. And I didn't know why. And, the week I got back from Andros Island, lockdown occurred, pandemic, nobody could go anywhere. after that. So it was for quite a while. So anyway, if you like those kind of stories, I do. Those are fun stories to read about. Kind of like spiritual detective stories. So there's a bit of that in there, and then there's some of the miracles that have happened during the healings. But then there's 2 full chapters of just messages from the guides, straight up messages, why we're here. I mean, we asked the guides, what's the meaning of life? What's our purpose? They told us. It's all in the book. So
Fabulous, mate.
cool
Fabulous.
stuff. An honor to be the mechanism to deliver it.
Yeah, amazing. Where can we send people if people want to grab a copy of your book, or if they want to come and have a healing session with you? Where's the best place to send them, mate?
Yeah. So yeah, I have a personal website called greggkirk.com. So it's my name, GreggKirk.com. So everything's there. My books are also up for sale on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. But I also on my own website, and you can connect with me on my website. There's an appointment link, and then also there's an events link, so you can connect with the Zoom circles. I mean, anyone in the world can connect there, and do some in-person sessions and events as well.
Gregg, mate, lovely to connect today, man. I loved every minute of it. And thank you so much for sharing so openly and honestly. And I have no doubt you will get an amazing response from everyone listening to this today. I come and support you, mate.
Well, so great to meet you, Guy. I love what you're doing, and keep doing it. You're doing good things and fighting the good fight, as they say. So, and thank you again for inviting me.
Thanks, legend. Thank you.